Okay, we're live. Thank you so much. We're going to call the Special Committee for Reimagining Public Safety to order. I'm going to ask if the clerk will read the roll.
Baylor.
Aye.
Connor.
Aye.
Freeman.
Aye.
Fusco. Kamer.
Aye.
Lombardo.
Aye.
McKittrick. Malik.
Aye.
Neal. Amobian.
Aye.
Samples. Somerville.
Here.
And Swirsky. All members are present except for Fusco, McKittrick, Neal, Samples, and Swirsky.
Okay. Thank you so much. We're going to go ahead and get started so that we won't be before you long. Wanted just to allow some time just to have some conversation. I know that we're coming towards the end of our process. Working groups are wrapping up and hopefully being able to turn in your recommendations here really soon. We've had a lot of positive feedback from the community, the public, those watching, just how great the working groups went. The information that has been shared has been very informative. And so we've also heard that community definitely wants an opportunity to engage and also be involved in the process. And so we have been talking about how can we engage the public in this process. And so we wanted to kind of present some ideas on this call today and get some feedback from council members. We had originally came before this committee and said we wanted to do a form of community engagement through a survey. And through our partnership with the University of Akron and Dr. Erickson would help us put together a survey that we could put out in the community to engage residents as it relates to public safety. And we were trying to do that this year, really finding out that time kind of escaped us and we don't really have the necessary time that we need to do it intentionally and do it the right way. And so wanted to bring before the committee the idea that we focus on a community engagement plan next year, the beginning of 2021, where we can still do that survey, but be a little bit more intentional, work with each council member so that surveys are specific and targeted to what's happening in your wards, your districts. Also an opportunity for us to go out in the community and share council's recommendation with the community, but also just basically ask, hey, is there something that we've missed? Is there something that we haven't touched on? And giving them, the community, an opportunity to give us some feedback as it relates to that. So it could be surveys, that are specific to each ward. Also, it could be a series of maybe town hall conversations to engage residents. I know that we have Dr. Erickson who is on with us, who maybe can speak a little bit more in terms of, what these surveys would look like and how she and the University of Akron can work with individual council members to create something that is specific to the concerns of each district.
Are you ready for me to talk
I
now,
am.
President
Thank
Somerville?
you.
Okay. Thanks again for inviting me here. I really am here just to sort of provide a sounding board for what your concerns may be and to reaffirm what President Somerville just said. The University of Akron, both its faculty and primarily its students, are ready to help with this process of collecting information through a community engagement process in whatever way, either as a whole group, and there can be a process that the whole council goes through, as well as working with each of you in terms of, as she mentioned, the specific needs of your ward. So we can do this both what I would refer to as qualitatively and quantitatively. So we can help coordinate virtual town halls and community engagement that might be focused on each specific ward as well as the community as a whole. And we have a number of students who are at varying levels of knowledge and expertise, but were this to be something that you wanted to do, we can train them up very quickly at the beginning of the new year and have them ready to mediate and hold focus groups, town halls, also any other kind of data collection in terms of surveys, open-ended surveys of questions, as well as we've done some research this year, during this period of time, this semester, about some best practices for data collection where other communities across the country have done this kind of work. So Shelby and Trayvon and I have worked to collect some of the best practices, and a lot of that includes what I would say closed-ended surveys. And Sarah, am I able to share something?
Sure, just one moment. You should be able to now.
Okay. Are you seeing my, let me see. Okay. Okay. Are you seeing my screen now?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So this was just a little bit of an introduction. And again, this can be totally shaped by you. These are just sort of our sort of draft of how we might go about this. Again, if it's just through a written process that can be online, accessible on the Akron City Council website. We can also have it available, through the public libraries, other kinds of ways, have it put out through the Beacon Journal, a link to it, which we can also facilitate with our software at the University of Akron. So we can take care of all that, but it would be sort of talking about and bringing people back up to speed about the 4 different working groups. And so this was an original view when we were thinking about doing it this fall, focusing on the issues that each working group was concerned with, and encouraging and being very thankful that people are willing to be engaged in this process. And so we're asking for people's feedback. So just saying, using this brief survey to learn more about your views, hopes, and concerns regarding public safety. It will just take a few minutes. And then this will help, advance the agenda and the initiative in the community. A couple of different ways. They can be these kinds of open-ended questions that people can write their answers to. These can also potentially serve as starting questions, opening sort of salvos for people who are online and wanting to engage in a discussion, talking about the various substantive issues of the working groups. One of the benefits, I think, about doing this a little bit later is that instead of these topic areas, we could be using we could be using your recommendations as the starting point here. And so that, again, as just sort of an open-ended query, asking people to share their stories, positive or negative, about each of these topics or each of the recommendations that you would put out there, as well as some other open-ended questions that have come from previous work in this area in terms of asking specific communities what they feel the police are doing particularly well. And other than issues related specifically to the police, what would contribute to greater feelings of safety in your neighborhood? What resources or services would improve your feelings of safety? Again, not trying to assume that the police are the only issue about areas of safety. And then specifically, what do the police need to improve on for you to feel safer in your neighborhood? And the envisioning of what is possible with this kind of last question is, if the police were doing a really good job, what would they be doing? What would it look like if each community members felt like they were doing a particularly good job? So that, either focusing on opening things with the recommendations by the working group topics, as well as these kinds of open-ended questions that people can either do in writing, or these can serve as sort of a very loose structure for a focus group, town hall kind of process. And then just there's also a range of close-ended scales. If you were interested in not only just getting the depth and the very specificity of ward to ward in terms of open-ended stories, we can also collect these data community-wide. We have best practices about how to get a good response rate in terms of using this. The one benefit of using closed-ended scales is these things can be completed very quickly. We can also ask questions about where people are located, so we can do it. We can find out where in the Akron city they're located, which ward they're in. But there's all kinds of, again, this sort of collating what's been done across the country. You can ask things very quickly that give you a pretty broad range of things. One of the benefits of closed-ended scales, and I'll just close with this, is that you can find the breadth of agreement and disagreement across the community. So if instead of having, you know, a couple dozen people answer this, our goal would be to have hundreds of people to give us this set of responses. And there are various topic areas, as noted here, about issues of safety, issues of fairness or accountability, issues related to the budget. We can craft whatever combination of issues that might be related to the recommendations that you're providing, for example. We can provide closed-ended scales that people can answer very quickly to give a sense of where people are within and across the community. So I will just stop right there.
Okay. Thank you so much, Dr. Erickson. So at this point, what we'll do is we'll kind of open the floor. I don't know if there are any council members that have any specific questions for Dr. Erickson, or have any input, some feedback as it relates to the idea of the proposed community engagement component. And Sarah, I'm going to ask if you can help on your end to see if there are any raised hands.
Absolutely. I can see that Councilwoman Baylor has her hand raised, and also Councilman Fusco.
Okay. Councilwoman Baylor?
Oh, I'm sorry. I want to say to Dr. Erickson, this is really good information that you have imparted unto us today. And I really like the different aspects of gathering the information via surveys and all of that. I in particularly like the last one you talked about, where we would distribute it amongst lots of people to get common ground. I like that common ground, where there is common ground in different areas across the city. I think is a good place to kind of glean from and springboard from on this next phase. So the common ground thing, surveying across the numbers, the different jurisdictions, the different wards and whatnot, I think is excellent. And you know, I'm all for like the questioning, like the question that may even have a little dialogue attached to it, where people can make comments about it, and then, you know, that. So thank you for this. It's really good information.
Okay. Thank you so much. Councilman Fusco?
Just that, you know, given our current situation with COVID and where we're at, the good work, I believe we've done some good work so far, but this is a natural next step, I think, that we ought to take without question. It's just given our circumstance, our current circumstance. However, though, I think we shouldn't, hopefully 2021 is going to be much brighter than 2020, and that we will be able to have in-person possible meetings. I think we're losing a little bit with the technology piece and this and that. I really believe we lose a little bit, but we've got to forge forward, and I welcome this next step. I think it's brilliant. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Fusco. Sarah, do you see anyone else on your end?
I can see that Councilman Malik has his hand raised.
Councilman Malik?
Sure. I just wanted to point out two quick other things. I agree with Councilman Fusco that this is the next step. That makes a lot of sense, especially after the work that our working groups have done. Now we can kind of share some of that information out to the community and receive feedback in exchange. It's a two-way street. And I think particularly with the process that we'll be going through in hiring a new chief, hopefully this can help inform that to some degree. And then also, to the degree that we can have, I know President Somerville, you've mentioned, having this in like a sheet of paper in libraries or in other places, because obviously we are losing a little bit with some of this being virtual, and we do want to make sure that everyone's voice is represented, that there's a whole spectrum of thought and opinions and perspectives on these issues. So I know we want to make sure that it's fully representative and not just one subset of folks or one part of town.
Councilman Malik, thank you so much. Are there any other council members that have any questions or comments as it relates to the proposed community engagement for 2021?
I don't see any hands raised.
All right, well, perfect. We want to thank those who have given us the input and feedback thus far. So we will continue to move forward and put in motion a concrete plan for community engagement for 2021, and come back to this body to really share, what that process will look like. I'm actually going to ask Councilman Malik to, at this time, kind of just share. We've been very fortunate. We have two really great interns who have been helping us along this process, and they have done a lot of work and have attended a lot of the meetings, spent some time watching some of the working group meetings, and have prepared a summary that's going to be able to help council kind of move forward. And so I wanted Councilman Malik just to talk a little bit about that.
Yes, thank you, President Somerville. Shelby Stevens Kennedy, one of our interns, has put together a kind of comprehensive summary of, I think, what's been discussed in each of the working group meetings, broken down, by each group. So I think Sarah is going to share that with all of the members of council this afternoon, and hopefully that can help as we put together some recommendations over the next 2 weeks. I believe it's 2 weeks from today that we're looking to have that report finished. And so, I know it's, each working group is working on this on their own. I'm certainly, willing to help in any way I can. So if anyone, would like me to help, like edit or work on any of that, I'm certainly happy to do that. But I think, this document from Shelby is a really helpful start.
Thank you so much, Councilman Malik. Are there any other questions relating the recommendations that will be due here just in a few weeks? I want to thank Councilman Malik for agreeing to work with working groups. Know that once all recommendations have been received, council will put forth, a formal report that first will come back to this body before it's released to the public. Any other questions or concerns before we adjourn?
I don't see any hands raised.
Okay. Well, I want to thank all of those who have joined us and given their input, and we will adjourn the meeting if there are no further questions or concerns. Meeting adjourned.
Okay. Our next meeting will be the Planning and Economic Development Committee meeting at 1 o'clock.